We are 2 weeks into the NBA season, and while many things can still change, we are quickly finding out which teams are for real and which are not. And one of the unfortunate and unavoidable aspects of any NBA season is injuries. While we have been fortunate not to see too many players go down so far, there are still a few notable players who will be missing some time in the beginning of the season. That being Lonzo Ball with no timetable to return, Cameron Johnson who will be out with at least 1 to 2 months with a meniscus tear, James Harden who's going to be missing a month with a tendon strain, and Pascal Siakam with an adductor strain, expected to miss at least 2 weeks. And of course, we can't forget about Kawhi Leonard, who has played a few games but is yet to make a full return. And with wing injuries slowly beginning to stack up, there is one NBA veteran and future Hall of Famer who is yet to receive a call this season, that being Carmelo Anthony. Coming off of his 19th and arguably his worst NBA season, Carmelo Anthony is one of the few big-name free agents who is yet to receive a call over the 2022 offseason. But I have a feeling as the season wears on, we are going to see him suit up at least one more time. Melo's 2021 to 2022 campaign was statistically the worst of his career. His 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist per game is far from the Melo we once knew. However, last season he was more than solid on a struggling and disappointing Los Angeles Lakers team. There were a few bright spots that we saw out of him, namely his career-high 57% true shooting percentage and a respectable 37% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. This made him arguably the Lakers' best shooter last season. Not that really means that much given how much they have struggled from 3 over the last few years. Not to mention he was still a pretty efficient mid-range player on a relatively low shooting volume, shooting 50% from mid-range on 110 shots. And another small thing, but at 37 years old, Carmelo remained relatively healthy, playing in 69 games, averaging 26 minutes per game. Which for reference, that is more games than LeBron James and Anthony Davis played last year. Carmelo still has more than enough to be capable and even an efficient bench player in the NBA, but you also can't consider bringing him in without looking at the huge negative he is defensively. Now, peering into some of his advanced defensive stats, Carmelo doesn't look that bad. His negative 0.8 defensive plus minus and 1.4 defensive win shares are actually some of his better numbers for his overall career. But asking any Lakers fan, his lack of attention to detail and his effort on the defensive end is clear. Even in his prime, Melo was hardly a positive defensive player, but come on, you don't go signing Carmelo Anthony looking for some sort of defensive effort. It is the bullet that you bite and you hope that he can put up more than what he gives up. But even with this defensive handicap, there are certainly some teams who can still benefit from signing a wing like Carmelo. Obviously the Lakers were talked about a lot over the offseason and their lack of offensive production makes Carmelo look desirable. However, Los Angeles doesn't look like that they're really going to be competing this year, and with their defensive focus, Melo doesn't really fit that scheme. And I'm definitely expecting Carmelo to sign with a contender at this point in his career, especially one where he can still contribute and put in good minutes off the bench. Over the offseason, there were some talks of him signing with his hometown team of the Brooklyn Nets or actually going back to the New York Knicks, but those talks have died down as neither of those teams have really hit the ground running this season. I could see a fit in Brooklyn as Carmelo's all offense and no defense actually does mesh pretty well with Ben Simmons having no offense and some good defense. Milwaukee and Boston are two big contenders whose names have also been thrown around with Carmelo. These teams tend to be pretty heavy on forwards and can always benefit from another big body who can shoot the 3. Milwaukee could be a solid fit as they already have a strong defensive identity and typically tend not to rotate out on the perimeter too often, being more than reluctant to give up the 3 ball. Not to mention being on the same team with Giannis and Drew Holiday, they can hide anyone's lack of defensive skills. Boston too is another big team who's coming up in talks as Danilo Gallinari was supposed to be a key contributor for them coming off the bench, but he's going to be missing the entire season due to an ACL tear. Melo can replicate a lot of the production Gallinari could have given Boston this year. And lastly, of course, Phoenix is one of the big teams who could be expected to sign Carmelo Anthony. With losing Cameron Johnson to a meniscus tear, it is unknown when he's going to be able to return this season and how good he is going to be once he finally returns. The Suns and Jay Crowder have also yet to strike a deal and have been working to find a mutual trade target, giving them a huge hole at the forward position. I could easily see Melo filling in the role of what Cameron Johnson does, that being a primary 3-point shooter who also gets a few ISO attempts per game and doesn't have too many defensive responsibilities. Not to mention Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony have been longtime longtime friends and do have some history dating back to Houston. And of course, Carmelo Anthony being 38 years old headed into the season, likely just going to be on a veteran's minimum, making it relatively easily for most teams to be able to sign him. Alright guys, well that is it for this one, but I want to hear from you guys. Where do you think Carmelo is going to end up with? Do you think he even still has a role in the NBA, or is it time to hang him up and look for the Hall of Fame? But that's it for this one. I'll catch you guys later.